Good morning, lovelies. Today we are ranking all the major protagonists from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I've got my Lord of the Rings ring here. If you can see, is it X? There it is. We are going with the movies, not the books. I am sorry. This is going to include all members of the Fellowship, Arwen, Eowyn, Eomer, Theoden, and Faramir. We are using my personal opinion here, nothing more. But I want to stress right now that all of these characters are very well written. All authors should study and learn from them. This isn't like Star Wars, there are clear discrepancies in quality. But just because they're all well written doesn't mean I have to like all of them. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also smash the like button. It really helps the channel grow. In 14th place, we have Arwen. She started off so strong. She grabs Frodo, she outruns all 9 Nazgul to get them to safety, she washes them away in a flood, and then she spends the next 2.5 movies lying around, dying, making Aragorn feel mopey. I get that her whole purpose and reason that she exists in these books is to give Aragorn a reason to fight and something to come home to, but at that point, just replace her with a big plot of land like the Shire for the Hobbits. They serve the same purpose. She is a whole character. She could have played a much bigger role. She could have been the one to convince the elves to fight at Helm's Deep rather than just having them show up out of the blue. She could have been the one to bring the sword to Aragorn and then dramatically pass out in front of him because, she's dying. I mean, she's the granddaughter of Galadriel, for crying out loud. Yo, Grandma, one of the most powerful elves in the world. Please help my slam piece. I get that the books were written in the 1930s and 40s, but the movies were made in the 21st century and they changed plenty of other things. They've got no excuse. In 13th place, Faramir. It's not his fault that his dad is a dick, but it is his fault that we didn't get a narrative arc from it. Think about the last time that Faramir saw his dad alive. It was when he was taking that suicide mission and dragging 200 other people to do it with him, just to get his dad to love him. I mean, and then when he wakes up after, his injuries, he finds out that his dad is dead. And we don't even get a reaction, a grieving, well, this sucks, but in retrospect, he was a really crummy dad. Or even he could have done his arc before that, and then when it comes to accepting that mission, he could have been all right, I'm gonna do this, but not because I think it'll make you love me. I shouldn't have to do that. I'm gonna do this for Gondor. You can go suck a dick. But nothing. I get that with 14 major characters, not all of them is gonna get a huge narrative arc, but just a little one. Am I that spoiled on Zuko? In 12th place, Gandalf. This is mostly derived from The Hobbit, but he doesn't seem to be able to take no for an answer, even from his friends and allies, and that's worrisome. He's very much my way or the highway, kind of manipulative and underhanded, I don't know. I'm getting some red flags here. I would not want to be his friend. I would want to steer clear of him. Having said that, he does have some pretty good moments.
You shall not pass!
In 11th place, Frodo. I like him because he's this really great combination of brave and humble, and he resisted the pull of the ring for 3 whole movies when most people couldn't last 3 minutes. But he's also kind of a whiny crybaby about it, totally understandably, which is why he's not lower on the list, but it still gets on my nerves. Also, he keeps holding out the ring in the palm of his hand for anybody to take. Do you want it? Do you want it? Anyone else want to do this quest that I took up? And the guy trips so much. This thing is gonna go flying from his hand when he stumbles, and it's gonna go lost in a crack in the earth or something. Put it in your pocket. In 10th place, Eomer. He is loyal, charismatic, badass, played by Karl Urban. He doesn't have much of an arc though, which is why he's not higher on the list. His uncle died, leaving him to be king of Rohan, and we get nothing from it. He's the next time we see him, he's out fighting more orcs for Gondor. a moment of silence, a moment with Eowyn maybe, since she was there with him when he died? Nothing? Okay. In ninth place, Legolas. The guy is all trick shot and part of one of the most iconic friendships in literature. There's nothing to hate here. In eighth place, we have Merry. He's this weird mix of responsible and troublemaker. Like, when he's on his own, he's very mature and responsible, like offers to fight for Rohan, goes with Eowyn, and but when he's with Pippin, they become the living embodiment of my last two brain cells. And I love that. In seventh place, we have Pippin. He's not nearly as responsible as Merry at first. He does get better. Narrative arc. He's even more ride or die than his friend, and he always has a bad idea, which sometimes turn into good ideas. Like skirting around Isengard to go back home, that shouldn't have worked. But it did, with great results. In sixth place, Theoden. I do not appreciate him benching Eowyn, which is why he's not in the top 5 here. I mean, seriously, just think about it for a second. In Helm's Deep, they were arming 12-year-old kids, but not the adult woman who really wanted to fight. And don't tell me it's a family thing, because he was more than happy to have Eomer fight for him. And don't tell me it's because, well, he wants someone to stick around to, rule in case he and Eomer both die. Everyone was very aware that the Uruk-hai are going to be slaughtering all of them if they lost, so they need to have all of their fighters front and center. Either that or send Eowyn and all the refugees ahead of them so they get a head start in case they do fall. I mean, just it frustrates me so much. But he gets up here because of this one scene and one scene only, and that is in the Return of the King, after the Riders of Rohan have cleared out the field of all the orcs and they think they've won and it's great, and then the Oliphants show up and everyone was like, oh shit. But then you literally see Theoden's face go from we are gonna die to no guts, no glory, and he leads them all in this charge against them. I'm getting goosebumps just talking about this. I love that scene so much, and I love him for doing that. He's just such a... Oh, and his last moments with Eowyn were so sweet. In fifth place, we have Gimli. He stars in one of the most iconic friendships in fantasy, if not all of literature. But unlike Legolas, who didn't really share a whole lot of anti-dwarf sentiments at the start of the trilogy, Gimli explicitly went from never trust an elf to I'ma die by this elf. This is my dude right here. Also, he's hilarious. In fourth place, we have Boromir. It's not his fault the ring made him a dick. We see his true personality in that flashback that Faramir has in the Two Towers, and then also when Frodo leaves, taking the ring with him. And we see that he's a decent, compassionate, charismatic guy. The dude lived like a badass, died like a badass. Also, his death scene is still, to this day, Sean Bean's favorite death scene. And that guy knows what he is talking about. Now we're down to our last 3, which is Sam, Eowyn, and Aragorn. And this is where we start to get a little controversial, because I know that my favorite is not other people's favorites, and that some people would order these differently, but this is my video and what I say goes. So in third place, Samwise Gamgee. Sam is the friend that we all want, but very few of us actually have. He's also one of my favorite tropes, which is the crouching moron hidden badass. That is, you don't expect this character to be a badass for whatever reason, and then they just suddenly are. In Sam's case, he's a hobbit, none of them are great fighters. He's a gardener, his weapon of choice is a frying pan, and then he goes and he takes down Shelob, and then a tower full of orcs. In second place, Eowyn. When I was in second grade-ish, I came to school dressed as Eowyn for Halloween, and nobody knew who I was because the Two Towers hadn't come out yet in theaters, and my parents were apparently the only ones who read their kids Lord of the Rings. But she was one of my first heroes, one of the first women characters that I identified with who got to do great things like kill the Witch King of Angmar. And unlike Sam, whose big fight almost came out of nowhere, with Eowyn it was a whole movie and a half of buildup. We saw from almost her first appearance in Two Towers that she wanted to fight, that she was trained for this, that it was her drive, it's what she wanted to do more than anything else, and then she finally gets it. And it's amazing. And even when she's not fighting, she's one of the very few people in Theoden's court, if not the only person, who actively goes against Wormtail and tells him to his face what a liar he is and just refuses him. I love her so much. Which means in first place, Aragorn. He's just as awesome as Eowyn, but because he's a guy, he gets to show it off more often, which means he gets some more really great fight scenes and leadership scenes. I'm also just a huge sucker for Paragon heroes, and Aragorn is one of them. His only flaw is that he chose Arwen over Eowyn. I mean, just why? She's right there. She's way more interesting than that mopey elf. I mean, their babies would have been so badass. Whatever, I'm not gonna get into a whole ship war here. Tell me your favorite Lord of the Rings character in the comments, and if you liked this video, hit subscribe and the like button to help the channel grow. Bye, lovelies!